Hi, I'm Alan Day, CEO and founder of State of Flux, and welcome to The Power of Three, a video series where we interview leading chief procurement officers and executives about three things that have influenced their careers. From books to bosses, from music to movies, we explore the three things that have shaped their success. Join us as we learn from the best of the business here on The Power of Three. Hi everybody, I'm Alan Day and welcome to this week's session of The Power of Three. I'm extremely lucky to have Paul Gardner here, who's currently CPO of Mars Pet Nutrition. And Paul, I'll let you introduce yourself, but thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks Alan. Hi everybody. So Paul Gardner, I'm based here in the UK. As Anna said, Chief Procurement Officer for Mars Pet Nutrition, one of the divisions within Mars Pet Care, within the broader Mars business. Been with Mars just on 4.5 years, and prior to that spent over 20 years with Dana. So really pleased to be here this morning.
Thank you, thanks. And Paul, so great to have you. We were discussing slightly before this about the difficulty of kind of choosing roles and bosses in my pressure of picking the top three. But do you just want to talk through kind of three key roles that you've had that have helped shape your career to date, if that's okay?
Sure. I think the one, I won't say the standout, but the first one that jumped on the page was when I was the global category director for milk in Danone.
Yep.
So when I came into role, milk was by far the biggest category, but we're buying milk from farms around the factories. So you can't buy milk centrally, you can't predict milk centrally. And I think over the course of the 7 years, we actually showed that whilst it might be bought locally, you can demonstrate the impact of an event in China or in Brazil or whatever else, and how that influences either the milk price or availability in all the different regions. And so we really transformed that from almost a procurement category into a really strategic asset for the business. So I think that was the role that I had a lot of fun in.
Excellent. And your other two, just to challenge you slightly.
Yeah, and so then after that role, I moved into a different role within Dantrade, which was the purchasing company that Danone created inside its business, and I headed up all raws and packs cross division.
Right.
So that was a different experience because we're trying to bring three different segments together, bring the teams together, integrating a new ERP system, new ways of working, and actually creating the real leverage of buying as one company, not as three separate divisions. So that one was, it was a great example because we really got very involved. I was general manager of the company for a couple of years as well. And then the third one is actually my current role.
Okay.
And why my current role? I think it's just not the clash, the benefit of three things coming together at once. I'm working for a great company that's got principles which are very close to my own personal values, which just make it a great place to work. But also what we're doing within pet nutrition with the teams, how we're trying to bring the strategy for the function together. We can get all excited about some of the digital things and sustainability challenges we've got, but at the same time, we've got to fix some of the foundations. And I think it's that balance of those. It's very exciting.
Yes.
And I can genuinely say I'm happiest now than I've ever been in my career. It's a role I love. It's a company that I get a lot out of, with a purpose, which is a better world for pets, which you can't get better than that.
Very cool. Very cool. And as a farmer's son, it's nice to see that you've started in the farming or milk side of things, or I should say, as a dairy farmer's son, and kind of almost remained in the same sector really with the pet side. So that's pretty cool, actually.
Okay.
So, and if you stand back, what are the three things that you'd like to be known for throughout your career? What kind of stands out for you that people, either your stakeholders, your bosses, your employees, what would you like to be known for?
It was interesting. I love this question because I wrote it down. I've put all the answers I came up with are around leadership more than about the functional
Yeah.
capability. I mean, you've got that there as well. But I think the first one would be to be a great leader. To bring vision. Build strategy. Be a good business partner for the business to build strategy and how commercial can or purchasing can support that going forwards. The second is very, very humble. Is just somebody that really cared about people. I've been privileged to manage a lot of people throughout my career, and I care for every single one of them. And for people to know that yes, I challenge them hard. I try and push the bar high. I try and develop them, to be the best they can be. But throughout that, it was strong empathy for people that come to work. And then kind of linked to that is, and we'll touch on this a little bit probably in the next question when we talk about books, but I'm very inspired and motivated by Simon Sinek. So the notion of creating a circle of safety, or this psychological safety for people, that they can actually then try and test and learn, do different things without looking constantly over the shoulder as, will I get the blame for something? So creating a circle of safety that people can be their best versions of themselves at work and hopefully learn something from me from outside of work.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that. I read somewhere, and this was, I know we were talking about teenagers earlier, and this was more about kind of children, but actually asking, and I, to be fair, I've tried it with my kids. I'm not sure how successful it's been, but asking about how many failures they've had today, kind of thing. So actually encouraging them to try new things,
Yes.
and failure is a good thing. It sounds like it's quite aligned to your circle of safety there.
No, absolutely. If something doesn't go the way expected, the good news is you're going to learn something from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way you have to look at it.
Yep, constant, continuous and learning. Love it. And so you touched on that I was going to ask you about books, so what are 3 books that you've kind of throughout your career either kind of influenced you, shaped you, or frankly might just be books you enjoy in your downtime? What are 3 books that kind of get you thinking?
I think the books I chose are all sort of linked to work. I mean, there's lots of other books that I've read that you could put in here, but I mean, the first one, it was an easy one to put on the page, is Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
I first came across Simon back in 2014, 2015, with Start With Why and whatever. And I've seen him speak a couple of times, and I just like the way, the observation on some of these things, and looking at what leadership is, not just in a CPG context, but in military context or in government context, etc. And there's a few things in that book that really resonated with me, and it kind of helped me realize, oh, maybe that's what I do without realizing that's what I'm doing. So it kind of helped me understand a bit the style. The second one was one I read more recently, which is Soul for Happy by Mo Gawdat. Yep. So Mo is I think Chief Business Development Officer for Google X, where he was. Right. And it's a wonderful book. It's a very sad book, very emotionally, because he's telling a story in it. And, without giving too much away, solving for happy is to be not unhappy. And if you think, why we're unhappy, because we're always looking for the next best thing, and maybe we're not grateful enough for what we have. Yes. And appreciating what we have every day. And one of my colleagues at work, she tells me she sits down with her twin daughters and every night and says, what are you grateful for today? And I think sometimes we get so wrapped up with tomorrow or ambition, whatever else, we miss what's around us right now. So that's the second one. And then the third one I use a lot in work and various conversations is Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet. Okay. Yep. So this is the notion of, instead of people asking for permission, presenting in a presentation, I'd like your permission to go and do this. Just turn it around and say, this is what I'm going to do. Take more responsibility. This is what I'm going to do, unless you can see something that I've missed.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
kind
not
of
like
sorry, I was going to say it's quite aligned to, I know certainly at State of Flux, given the original consulting heritage, one of the things I talk about is with the team is that sort of upward management. So this is the end goal. You tell me what you need from me to achieve that goal. So I'm expecting that ultimately they're managing me rather than me managing them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So is that kind of where? What?
Yeah, it's very much that, rather than sort of coming in and asking everybody for, is that okay if we...
It's all right. I have one under the desk as we speak. Luckily, being quiet, but I'm sure at some point she'll bark at something.
Conversation. Yeah, no, it's more rather than sort of coming to a meeting and presenting and saying, here are the options, tell me what you want us to do. No, yes. You tell us what you intend to do, and I'll say, well, have you considered this? Have you considered that? But I'm fine with what you're doing. And it's about taking responsibility as opposed to looking for somebody else to take the responsibility or accountability for decisions. We're all, we can all do that.
You love it. Absolutely love it. So changing it up a little bit. So great books. How about, and these tend to lead to more relaxation, but how about 3 movies? What are 3 movies that you either enjoy or you've loved or kind of just get you thinking?
This was a tricky one. It took me a little while because there's so many kind of great movies, but then you get stuck in the ones that you've seen recently, and then you don't sort of reflect back. I think the first one is Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks.
Yes, yeah.
I love that movie, and particularly in there, there's a line in there from one of the characters, and he's being accused of being a Russian spy in the US in the 1960s, and he just doesn't seem perplexed by the whole situation. And Tom Hanks kind of says to his character, if you're found guilty, they're going to kill you. Aren't you worried? And he looks him straight in the eye and says, would it help? And I just thought that was just, we do worry about stuff that you don't need to. And it's also a bit about negotiation because he's an insurance lawyer negotiating hostage release, etc. It's a very, very, it's a great movie. If you've not seen it, I would really recommend it. The second one is probably showing a bit more my emotional sort of romantic side, which is The Notebook with James Warner.
Okay. Yes.
And it's got a personal link as well because it is a story about a couple and she's got dementia. My mum suffered from dementia as well. And I think it just kind of resonates a bit that, how important your memories are, because when they've gone, they've gone, if you know what I mean. And very often we're so focused again with tomorrow that we actually forget to appreciate what you got today, or even just stop and look back and say, do you remember a year ago we were doing such and such? That was a great holiday, or that was whatever. So that was the second one. And then the third one is a James Bond one. My favorite James Bond book is Thunderball, and the best version of it was Skyfall with Daniel Craig. I love that movie. Excellent.
Very good. I like it. Yes. I'll comment in a minute, especially as I think most people have kind of really embraced the James Bond side of things, and I completely agree. I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see what comes next.
Yes,
for the James Bond. It's pretty hard to pick it up from where he left it, but yes.
It wakes up. It's just a dream.
I'll switch it up a bit again, and I know we were talking about this earlier and how difficult this is to do, to single out kind of 3 bosses that have shaped your career. But I'm really interested, because you've had clearly a very strong career, and you're in a great kind of leadership position. So it's great to understand what shaped you throughout that career to get to where you are, really, if that's right.
So it's a great question, but it's also, really, really hard. How do you choose one? One, and The first one was the easiest. The other ones were probably harder. It's Philippe Bassin. He was my boss when I was in Danone for over 10 years. And one of the things I appreciated with Philippe is a minor, you know, how much he trusted me, how much he stretched me, but also, I had a very difficult moment with the milk market, and it's a very awkward moment professionally, probably my hardest one professionally. And Philippe absolutely stood by me, and he demonstrated to me what psychological safety is. He demonstrated to me what loyalty was, and that really shaped me. It was a very low moment in my career, and it actually gave me a springboard for the rest of it. And I'd walk on hot coals for him.
It's interesting, isn't it? They do say, and there's some research that say that everyone has a point in their career, generally fairly early on, where it doesn't go how it should go. So people track upwards, and then they hit something, and if they get the support, the boss, etc., then they can continue the trajectory. If they don't, then that's pretty much where they stay. And that's quite an interesting, I'll try and dig out the research, but it's been an interesting one to note, and I've certainly seen that across some of our graduates, actually. So, yeah.
And then I think the second one goes back much earlier in my career when I was in Nestle.
Yes.
And again, seen from earlier, I've always been a good manager, a good leader. And this is a guy called Tony O'Neill. So Tony was working with us when I was in the Wisbech facility, which was the first foil and pouch facility Nestle put in the UK. Yeah. And with Tony, we were opposites. He was very factual, very numbers driven, and I was very people driven and whatever else. But the combination worked really well. And he really taught me a lot about, building the business cases. You can have the emotional argument, that's important. You use that when you're selling it, but let's get the numbers right.
Yes.
And that was, still very early in my career, and I think that was a really good way, just to me, for a bit more rounded. You can't lead everything just based on emotion. You've got to have the business cases and whatever. And it was a great 3 years we spent together, and I learned a lot from him.
Awesome. And the final boss.
The final
I'm not going to let you get away with two. So.
Yeah. The final one is Pascal de Bertrini. So Pascal was also in Danone.
Yes.
He was my boss towards the end of my career there, and the reason I picked this one was it was a very different style of management and leadership, but also he was based in Singapore,
right?
Which meant, when you're used to having a lot of face-to-face time, seeing each other every day in the office, you get a certain comfort in that relationship. And this was different. This taught me, I was much more sort of standing alone, doing my own thing. The connection points were not as frequent. And this was back, 2016, 2017. And we didn't have Teams as reliable as we have today, or Zoom or anything like that. So, the IT that we had at the time to support was not great. And I think that just kind of put me in a space where, you have less proximity. You still have the support of your boss, but you don't need to see them every day. And that gives you a bit more space. And that was probably a good opportunity to grow in and fill that space. So that's why I chose Pascal for the third one.
Nice. I like it. And in terms of, we've talked about books, we've talked about bosses. Are there kind of three quotes or mantras that you've lived by, or that resonate with you throughout your career?
I think if the question about the bosses was hard, I think this one was harder, because I've got loads of quotes. Everyone knows that I've got a quote for everything. So I've got three that I've managed to convince myself are the top three, but I could change them. So the first one is, individually we are one drop, together we are an ocean.
Oh, I like it.
This is the notion of team, of everyone coming together. Everyone's got a part to play, and if everyone moves it an inch, then you've moved the whole thing a long way. So that's always been very strong for me. The second one is, A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they'll never sit under. This is very relevant to what a lot of us are facing right now when we think about sustainability. This is the decade to make a difference. Doing it in 2030, we've probably missed the boat. So, some of the things that we're doing now will benefit people in the future. Some of the, coming back into work, some of the changes we're trying to make now in the organization will benefit the people that come after me. I won't see all the benefits in the role I'm doing. I will have moved on to something else before people see that. So I think it's always that notion that you're building something better for the future. I think that the Maori sports call it sort of waka papa, this kind of thing. I'm in this seat for a period of time, and when I leave it, it's going to be in a better place, and that I'm setting the next person up for success.
Yeah.
And then the third one is a Walt Whitman quote, which is "Be curious, not judgmental." So for those out there that have been watching Ted Lasso, and you've seen me drinking from my Ted Lasso mug, I believe. Honestly, I could quote just about every episode in Ted Lasso for a quote that really means something. But this one really resonated because it is, too often we judge the book by its cover. We know what's coming, and we're not curious enough to try and understand, why that person is thinking that way or why that situation happened. Thinking we know it all without really understanding. And it kind of goes into, we don't know what other people are suffering from, either in their personal life or professional life or anything else which is going on. And if they're not 100% on the day, we just judge them based on that. And I think it's just be a bit more curious and a bit more understanding as to what's going on.
Yeah, I love that. And just, I suppose the thing for me is just a bit more human as well, because we all make mistakes. And so, yeah, I absolutely love that. And as a fellow Ted Lasso fan, quite disappointed it's finished now, actually, but or has it? Yeah, certainly that human side for me is key. So yeah, thank you for those. They're really good. So speaking of human side, I'm gonna kind of switch it back to what makes you tick a wee bit. And this is one of my favourite questions because it's sort of shows me what you like in terms of relaxing and that sort of thing. So 3 music tracks that you either get up and party to or certainly relax to would be great.
So 3 very different ones I've chosen. So I play guitar. I've got a guitar hanging on the wall. So that's also part of it is the tracks that I like listening to, but also the tracks I like playing. So the first one is maybe not so well known. It's called Hear You Me by a band called Jimmy Eat World. And I first heard this when I was working out in Salt Lake City back 2007. And while we're living in the States, my girls were at school. They were learning to play bass and guitar. And the music teacher heard that we were playing this at home. So they invited us into the school spring concert. And as a family, the 3 of us played Hear You Me. And it was one of those moments that still gives me goosebumps now thinking back to it, with the 2 girls, one singing, one doing bass, me playing guitar. It was just a wonderful moment, and that will always, always stay with me.
That sounds lovely.
The second one, I like rock music. I could have listed anything from Coldplay, from Queen, from U2 to Ed Sheeran, anything like that. But 1,000 Trees by the Stereophonics.
Yep.
And this is a song. I mean, it's a great track, but it's also got a very strong message in there. It's about responsibility. You can positively influence or negatively influence. It only takes one tree to make 1,000 matches. It only takes one match to burn 1,000 trees.
Yeah, I like it.
So the story is about a soccer coach who's been coaching all these kids all the way through his career. And then you find out that he's taken it too far and he started, interfering in the locker room or whatever else. So it's that, It takes one tree to make 1,000 matches. It takes one match to burn 1,000 trees. It's just very poignant. Super song.
Yeah.
And then the third one is really showing my age, is going back to 1977, Pink Floyd, from the album The Wall, Comfortably Numb, which is arguably my favorite all-time track and just the best guitar solo from Dave Gilmour, which I can play a little bit of it, but nothing like him. It's just fantastic. That's my go-to track if I need a boost.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. That's awesome. So in true, I think I've through our discussions, I've talked to you about how kind of in State of Flux, we always do 3 things that have gone well, 3 things that can be improved on, which was really the catalyst for this power of 3. So I'm gonna sort of get you to do that for yourself, if that's all right. So when you stand back and look at your career and all the, like everyone, all the highs and lows throughout that career, what are 3 things that have gone well and 3 things that you could have improved throughout your time?
So things that have gone well is, you're going to get a theme here because I always talk about people, but how people have grown and developed either through my management or the space that I'm giving, and that's a bit of my legacy. If they've learned one thing from me and they can use that going forwards, then I've done a good job. If that's one person or whatever, so that was something I feel really strongly about. The second is, and I can say this hand on heart on every single role I've done, when I've left it, it's been in a stronger place than when I joined it.
Yeah.
Now, you can't always say that in every role, but I look back and every role has been stronger when I've left, and that's back to that. I mentioned before this Waka Papa notion from the Maori. That it resonates really strongly with me, on our journey in our time in that constellation. And the third one, I went off beam a little bit, because the third one I'm probably most proud of is my 2 daughters. Nice. That, throughout the career, we still managed to raise 2 beautiful young women. They're making their own way in the world, doing very different things. And it's as important what we're doing off the page as what we're doing on the page when you're at work. And,
I agree.
And I just wanted to put that in because I am very, very proud of both of them.
Awesome, lovely. And now I'll get you to think about those 3 things that you could improve on when you stand back, or which I know is challenging. So I appreciate your candor on this.
Yeah, I think the first one was more about communicating more.
Yeah,
and not communicating that I'm not telling people what's going on, but I'm too humble about what we've achieved as a function or as a team or whatever else.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody that likes to kind of showboat or show off or anything like that. But maybe some of the things that we've done deserve to have a little bit more airtime and a bit more visibility. And I think, I was in conversations when I was in Danone, and the CFO at the time said, you've done some great work, but no one knows about it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of struck me a little bit, and thought, done myself a disservice, but more important, I've done the team a disservice, that we're not promoting what we're doing enough. So that'd be one. I think the second one that probably applies to the earlier part of my career. You said before, your career goes quite quickly, and you get a plateau and whatever. And I think, probably if I did my time again, it would be slow down. I think I was chasing hard at the very early point, particularly when the girls were quite young, and you think they're young, it's all right, they won't miss me too much because I'm busy traveling or whatever else. But actually, you're actually missing moments to build in those deeper relationships at very key stages in their growing up. And I think, if I could, I'd probably slow down a little bit. I'll talk about it later on. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the third one is, it was only relatively late in my career that I really started to, I'll say, believe in myself, but kind of really understand, what I could bring.
Yeah.
And I wish, we say that, youth is wasted on the young, but I wish I could know 20 years ago, what are my strengths? What are the things I really bring? What are the areas I need to still develop on? But if I'd known that then, I could have been in a very different place now. I'm happy where I am, don't get me wrong, but I think, just believing in myself a little bit earlier in the career would have been helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've touched on a couple of points there, and again, I'm sorry to bring this back to kind of State of Flux things, but that's my world. So we talk about having the humble perfectionist in the team, and the things that you're touching on definitely tick both those boxes. So I'm seeing that as both a positive and a kind of improvement area. But thank you for your candor there. And so just to wrap it all up, if standing back and thinking about those people that are coming through the profession or just early in their career, what are 3 pieces of advice that you want to share from your kind of journey?
I touched on this first one a second ago. I can't call myself a runner. I move faster than walking. Let's put it that way. Your career is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
And if you think about, if you are training, I've never run a marathon. I've run a half marathon. But when you're doing the training, you'll be doing some long runs. You'll be doing some easy runs. You'll be doing some gym training. You'll be doing some sprints. So you're getting diversity. You're building breadth in your training plan. Build breadth early on in your career. Don't be rushing for the next promotion, the next whatever else, because you're going to be a very narrow pyramid. Build that breadth. It will come. We're working for 30, 40 years. So it's a marathon. It really is a marathon, not a sprint. Second is a Ted Lasso quote, but it's very, very relevant. And it's the choices that we make that show who we really are, much more than our own abilities. It's when we stand up for the difficult situations, either publicly or privately. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking. And I think it is about choices. And we do have choices. We can always point the finger and say, oh, yeah, but that circumstance. No, we had a choice. So understanding that we'd be known for the choices we made, not for, he was a great guy. Or, he was expert on strategy or cost modeling or whatever else. That's not what you'll be remembered for. It's the choices you took.
Yeah,
and then
love that one.
And then the third one, and this is to all managers, leaders out there, or would-be leaders out there. In my whole career, nobody comes to work to do a bad job. I've not met a single person who comes to work deliberately to do a bad job. So if there's somebody that isn't doing the job that you need, maybe you've not put them in the job where they can excel. And you have to believe that everyone's got a set of abilities, and sometimes their ability is probably limited and can't go where you want to take it to. That's fine. That's a different conversation. But no one comes to do a bad job. No one deliberately is doing that. So if you find someone who's really struggling, be curious. What could they be really good at? And you see me have my drink there. Just believe in them and find out. Be curious. What can they really, excel at? And is there a role in the organization where they can be the best selves? That's what I would advise.
Thanks, Paul. I've a lot of what you've said tonight or today has really resonated. And funnily enough, I use the "no one comes to work to do a bad job" myself. So boy, does that resonate, and I love it. So thank you. And as always, I've enjoyed our discussion, and I know the listeners will as well. So thank you so much for that.
No, and thanks for asking, Alan. It's and for those listening, if you get a chance to sit down and ask yourself these questions, it is not easy. It's a great exercise. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for asking me.
Pleasure. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.